You're at Lake Rant, where I rant about whatever my $15 a month plus patrons want me to rant about. You can get one of these by being one of those. This one's for Andrew Soto, who says, rant about the term gender fluidity and its implications. If not for the notion of gender, would feelings of what we describe as dysphoria persist? And if so, in what form? In such an instance, would the sentiment be boiled down to wanting to look a certain way but not being able to? Would that not simply be envy? I don't know about envy. It's an interesting question because I don't think that dysphoria is necessarily tied to the same conversation as what gender you feel, which really I think a lot of the conversation around trans stuff has gotten muddied by this fact that, like, there's a difference between, I think, a dysphoria where you feel as though your body is literally incorrect. Like, there are some people who I think, regardless of what kind of clothes they're going to wear, how they present themselves, it's like they're rejecting a part of their body. Like, they feel disgusting. They don't feel as though their body is the way it's supposed to be. It's not a matter of optics so much. It's a matter of, like, an inner feeling. And I think that goes beyond just, sex. Like, it's something that people feel, like, different people feel all the time. I mean, I felt a sense of dysphoria when I felt this disconnect between what I had been before puberty and what I was like after. And I think a lot of people feel that way. And, like, in my case, I thought of it as a gender dysphoria for a while, but, like, after I kind of, got used to being that way, it no longer felt that way. It was like, okay, I'm fine with being a man. I don't feel a particular, like, revulsion towards this. It was more of, like, a knee-jerk response to going through such a massive change at one point. Different people have different levels of that. And I think there's some people who transition when they're, like, well into their 40s, and it's like, I have to imagine they just were always feeling this sense of dysphoria. So there's definitely people who are feeling it has nothing to do with, a fluidity of gender or even gender in the first place. It's a more of a physical thing, Like, if gender is just a concept that gender and sex are two different things, then, in that case, then, like, having your sex changed is not the same as having your gender changed. You could still identify, let's say you're a guy and you have a sex change, but you still identify as male. That would be having a gender fluidity, but your sex being literally altered. This is why I think that the notion of gender ought to just be thrown out. I mean, I talked about that in my Gender is Irrelevant vlog from way back, that, like, if you feel dysphoria about your body, by all means, have your body, altered to the form that you think it's supposed to be, if that makes you happy. But, like, to claim that that is the definitive property of what is this or that gender is just putting genders into a box, Like you said, it would be boiled down to wanting to look a certain way. It's like if I say, oh, I identify as a woman, and then I start dressing and acting as a woman, it's like, well, that's not what makes you a woman. That there are people who identify as women who are not dressing and acting that way. They feel as though they are a woman but are not performing that gender identity in that way, which doesn't mean that they're not a woman, So it's like, when you start talking about it on those terms, it's like everybody should just identify as just yourself. Just identify as what you are. But if, getting to a point where you're comfortable with what you are means you need to change your body, then you should do that. But, like, it's not because you're trying to be a woman. You're just trying to be yourself as best you can, whatever form that happens to mean and take. If you really care about being referred to a certain way, then fine, I guess. But, yeah, I think I've made my point.